Hello and welcome to Spirit Among Us. Today I want to talk about the idea of following God and the importance of following God. And I want to ask you something. What do you think about the word obedience? Being obedient. Now to me, I think this has a pretty negative connotation in my mind. I automatically think of like slavery or giving in to someone when you really don't want to or doing something you really don't want to. But God has this concept of obedience for us. He tells us that we should be obedient to Him, that we should follow Him. And I find that for some people that can kind of hit the wrong string. That makes them kind of wonder like, well, I don't know if I should like this whole God character. I don't know if this is the right thing for me. But the thing is, God's obedience is meant to only bring goodness out of our lives. Now that's a weird concept because we usually think of obedience as something when we are obedient, we are submitting and we're missing out on something. We're losing something. We're giving up our freedom. We're giving up our rights when we are submitting to someone else. But when we submit to God, when we are obedient to God and when we follow God, He blesses us. God is the only one that we can submit to and then be victorious as a result. So I want to start to look at this, to unpack this, and try to remove this connotation of the negative side of being obedient to God. For one thing, Jesus tells us in John chapter 14:15, He tells us that if we love Him, we will keep His commandments. We will be obedient. He says, if you love me, you will keep my commandments. So He's saying if we truly love God, if we truly love Jesus in response to the love He's given us, then we should be listening to Him. Then we should be following Him. So, okay, that makes sense, but what are some of the stakes of this? What could go wrong if we don't follow God, if we don't choose to listen to Him? Matthew chapter 7 verse 21. Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but the one who does the will of my Father who is in heaven. This is pretty heavy right here. Jesus is telling us that not everyone who calls on His name and says, Lord, Lord, will be saved. Not everyone will be welcome in heaven. Now, before I go into this, I want to state completely that I believe we are saved by faith. We are saved by faith in God. But I also believe, as it talks about in James, I'm pretty sure, that when we have faith in God, that should produce good works. We are saved by faith, but if we just stay stagnant in our faith, that faith is dead. What's the point of it if it doesn't do anything? And so Jesus really labels and shows the importance of following Him, of listening to Him, and not just saying, oh, I believe in you, God, but I don't really want to do anything. I just kind of want to stay in this comfortable part of my life. And yeah, I've got Jesus here, but not too much Jesus. Don't want that. Just a little bit of Jesus, just enough to be comfortable. That's not what God wants us to do. God wants us to be obedient to Him, to listen to Him, to follow Him. It's not just about knowing Jesus, but doing His will and following Him. God wants us to follow Him. It is not just about knowing Him. So by following God, by faith and then by following God, we are saved. We have salvation. But it's not just salvation that comes from following God. Proverbs chapter 3 verse 5 and 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to Him and He will make your paths straight. So here we have another promise here. It says that God will make our paths straight. He will straighten our paths. He will prepare the way for us in life. He will go before us and we will follow Him. He will lead us through whatever we have to face. But notice that this promise is conditional here. We have to do the first part in order for God to make our path straight. We have to trust in Him, and we have to lean not on our own understanding. And we have to, in all our ways, submit to him, and then he will make our path straight. You notice that God works in our lives when we submit to him, when we commit to following him, and when we trust in him. Then he straightens our paths. Then he starts working. But without that, why should he fulfill that promise? God is calling us to follow him, to submit to him, and he will bless us as a result. That means that we may miss out on other promises that God promises us if we don't follow him, if we don't listen to him, if we don't desire his ways, then we might end up missing out in life, missing out on his blessings, on the things he has for us. Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future. I think a lot of people are very familiar with this verse in the Bible. A lot of people are familiar with the concept of God knowing our plans, or knowing the plans he has for us. And how great it is that God has these plans to prosper us, not to harm us, to give us hope and a future. How awesome is that? That is so great. That is so amazing that our God is so intimately concerned with our everyday needs and desires and our lives in general. That's so great that we have this promise here. But if we don't follow him, how can he make his plans be accomplished? If we don't listen to him, if we don't obey him, then how can he work in our lives? If we keep setting up barriers that separate us from God, that keep us from him, and keep us from following him completely, then how can he work through us? How can he give us those plans? How can he fulfill those promises? Yes, he knows the plans he has for us, but if we refuse to follow him and to listen, then how can we expect to receive his blessing? How can we expect that if we don't listen to God, he will listen to us? There is great importance in following God and being obedient to him and chasing after his ways, following his commandments and desiring his will above all else. Once we do that, we receive all these amazing blessings and promises that he has for us. So I don't know what you're struggling with today. I don't know what you're facing, but I want you to take a look at what areas in your life you have not surrendered to God. What areas in your life you haven't really handed over, that you're still saying, Jesus, I really like this and I don't want to give it up. I don't want to hand it to you because I enjoy this. God's not trying to keep you from a good time. He's not trying to keep you from enjoying life. He wants you to have true joy. And the only way to find true joy is found in him and by following him. His way is the way everlasting, not our way. This world is passing away along with all of its desires. And the only thing that can satisfy us is Jesus Christ. The only thing that can satisfy our needs is him. So take some time, lay your life before the Lord today, and choose to be obedient to him, and trust that as a result, he will bless you richly. Thank you for watching, and God bless.